When I was in my senior year of high school, 17, restless, and always distracted, my mind, like most of my friends, was completely preoccupied with one thing: girls. There was one girl in particular who I couldn't stop thinking about: Tiffany. She was in my physics class, and every time she walked in, it was like the world shifted. Some of the guys had nicknamed her Crazy Tiff, not because she looked unhinged, far from it, but because she was stunning and, according to her exes, maybe a little intense. Whatever stories they whispered behind her back didn't matter much to me. I was drawn to her anyway. Something about her had a pull, one I couldn't ignore. That part about her being crazy doesn't really matter to the story. What matters is what happened the night she agreed to hang out with us. It was a warm Friday night, the kind where the air feels heavy but charged with possibility. My best friend CJ had somehow convinced Gianna, one of Tiffany's closest friends, to come chill at the beach with us. The biggest surprise? Tiffany agreed to come too. This was it, my chance. CJ pulled up to my house around 10. I grabbed my phone, took one last look in the mirror, and jumped into the passenger seat. The plan was already set in stone. Get me some one-on-one time with Tiffany, and CJ would do the same with Gianna. That was our mission, and we were determined to make it happen. On the way to pick them up, I was a bundle of nerves. My stomach was tight, and I kept rubbing my palms on my jeans. CJ kept cracking jokes to loosen me up, but it wasn't working, until the girls got in the car. Tiffany and Gianna slid into the back seat, and suddenly the energy shifted. Laughter filled the car. CJ and I took turns tossing out jokes, trying not to sound too rehearsed, and it was working. Tiffany laughed, like really laughed. Not the polite kind, but the kind that makes your chest swell because it feels real. By the time we reached the beach, something in me had changed. The nerves weren't gone, but they were buried beneath this quiet thrill. The sound of the waves, the warm night breeze, the soft thud of our shoes on sand, it all felt perfect. I just had this feeling. Tonight was going to be unforgettable. I don't remember every little thing that happened after we stepped out of the car and onto the dunes, but some moments burned themselves into my memory like scratches on film. I remember the stillness, that eerie kind of quiet that only exists at the beach late at night. No wind, no voices. The place was completely deserted, like we had the whole coastline to ourselves. CJ didn't waste any time. Somehow, almost effortlessly, he managed to slip off into the dark with Gianna, just like we planned. One moment they were behind us, and the next they were gone, swallowed by the shadows beyond the dunes. That left me and Tiffany standing under the moonlight with the soft hiss of waves nearby. We wandered down toward the shore, toes digging into the cool, damp sand. The ocean stretched out before us like a sheet of endless black glass, glimmering faintly in the moonlight. We let the water lap at our feet, cold and startling, before lying down together on the sand. The conversation was easy, natural. She was sharp, funny, and way more chill than I expected. I started to think the night was shaping up even better than I'd imagined. But then she went quiet. She sat up a little, squinting out toward the dark water. Her voice broke the silence. "What is that?" she asked, pointing. I followed her gaze, trying to track what she was seeing. The moonlight flickered on the surface, but I didn't spot anything out of the ordinary. "I don't see anything," I said, laughing lightly, thinking maybe she was messing with me or just imagining stuff. "You seeing sea monsters or something?" But her expression didn't change. Curious, and honestly trying to impress her, I stood up and started walking toward the shoreline, letting the chill creep up my ankles as I stepped into the water. My eyes scanned the waves again, more carefully this time. Then I saw it. Out there, not too far, but just beyond where the waves broke, was something tall, narrow, and vertical. It was just standing there in the water, completely still. A silhouette against the shimmering black ocean. It looked wrong, like it didn't belong. I took another step closer, and that's when it moved. Not with the tide, not like driftwood. It moved on its own. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. My heart kicked hard in my chest as the cold water soaked my calves. I turned and bolted toward Tiffany, barely able to form the words. "It's a person," I said, voice low and tight as I reached her. "There's someone out there." It was bizarre. There's really no better word for it. The idea that anyone would willingly be out there in freezing cold ocean water in the dead of night made zero sense. It wasn't just strange, it was wrong in a way that made the skin on my arms tighten. Tiffany stood up beside me, brushing the sand from her legs. I could tell she was uneasy, even if she didn't say it outright. "Can we move?" she asked softly. I nodded. I felt it too, the weight of being watched. We couldn't prove it, but it was as if whoever that figure was out there, they weren't just floating, they were focused on us, still, silent, watching. We walked further down the beach, letting the dunes and distance swallow the spot we had just been. The sand grew colder beneath our feet, and the only light came from the moon glowing faintly above the sea. After a while, we felt far enough, alone again, in the right way this time, and we sank back down into the sand. For a few moments, everything was okay. The only sounds were the crash of waves and the soft rhythm of our voices. The water shimmered in the distance, calm now, quiet. It felt like we were finally in the clear. Then Tiffany froze again. "You hear that?" she asked. I paused. At first, I didn't. But then, yeah, a soft, subtle splashing sound. It wasn't the waves. It was too quick, too light, like something or someone moving in shallow water. But just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. We both turned our heads toward the ocean. My heart thudded once, hard, like a knock against my ribs. Tiffany gasped. He was out there again. That same shape, standing upright in the water. Closer this time. Just standing there, motionless like before, but now unmistakably watching us. I didn't know how he'd gotten there so fast. It made no sense. The shoreline was a stretch of emptiness. We would have seen him walking. But there he was. I stood up, something hot rising in my chest. "I'm gonna go out there," I said, trying to sound firm, "and tell him to back off." But Tiffany quickly grabbed my wrist. "Let's just go, Moki." I didn't hesitate. Truthfully, I was hoping she'd say that. I wanted to look brave in front of her, but deep down, I was just grateful for an excuse not to go near that thing again. We got back to the car, the soft crunch of sand under our shoes the only sound cutting through the stillness. The night had cooled down, and the air felt thicker somehow, like it was watching us too. But CJ and Gianna weren't there yet. The parking area was dead silent. No headlights in the distance, no voices, just the faint roar of the ocean behind us, and a growing sense that something wasn't right. That's when my phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again, and again. Within seconds, it was vibrating non-stop in my hand, backlit by a flood of unread texts, all from CJ. I scrolled through them, my stomach dropping further with every line. Apparently, he'd been trying to reach me the entire time we were on the beach. I hadn't even realized I didn't have reception down by the water. But judging by the timestamps, these messages were sent in quick, panicked bursts. The first one read, "Dude, some weird guy is in the water watching us." Then, "Yo, some weird deformed-looking guy is stalking us. Get to the car now." The messages got increasingly frantic, spaced only by seconds. "Something's following us. It's not normal, bro. It's not. This isn't a person. It's something." That word hit me hard. Something, not someone. His second to last text made my skin crawl. "I'm coming to look for you. Answer when you get this." And then the final message. "We're on our way back to the car now. Get there." He'd also tried calling me 3 times. I didn't hesitate. I tapped call back and he picked up on the first ring. "CJ?" I said, my voice tight, but he didn't let me get another word out. His voice came through ragged and fast, like he'd been running. "You at the car?" he asked, breathless. "Yeah," I said, glancing around. "Good," he snapped. "Stay right there." Then the line went dead. Less than 30 seconds later, CJ and Gianna emerged from the darkness beside the Jeep, both of them moving fast, their expressions pale and tense. The dim glow of the streetlight caught the sweat on CJ's forehead as he leaned against the hood, breathing hard, like he'd been sprinting nonstop. He tried explaining, halting between gulps of air, the best he could. There was something, he panted, some deformed-looking thing, walking on two legs. It was following us. I just stared at him, trying to read whether he was serious or screwing with us. The way he said it, creature, was so strange, so absurd, I didn't know whether to laugh or believe him. I told him about the person we saw in the water, told him how Tiffany had pointed it out first, how it just stood there, and how it moved when I got too close. I hesitated, trying to piece it together. I don't know, just this really tall, lanky person, upright, just standing in the surf, didn't move until I was right near it. But CJ shook his head, his expression twisted with something deeper than fear. No, dude, I got a better look at it, he said, voice low now. It wasn't a person. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't right. It looked humanoid, yeah, but like wrong, deformed. Its face, the way it moved. Tiffany and I exchanged a quick glance. There was a nervous laugh between us, the kind people make when they're trying to pretend things are okay. But the tension hung heavy in the air. What CJ was saying, it was so far-fetched, so insane. But part of me, maybe the part still chilled from the cold water, believed him. And Tiffany's expression told me she was feeling the same. Jana stepped up and nodded quietly. "He's not making it up," she said. "It was real. I saw it too." Then the sound hit us. It tore through the stillness like claws on glass, this high-pitched, warbling, inhuman scream. Half human, half something else. The kind of sound that doesn't belong anywhere in this world. We all jumped, pure instinct, scrambling into the car. Door slammed, locks clicked. The air inside the Jeep was suddenly too hot, too tight. All four of us were talking at once, panic-fueled questions directed mostly at CJ as he pulled the keys from his pocket and jammed them into the ignition with trembling hands. What did it look like exactly? Was it following both of you? Was it behind you the whole time? But the longer we drove, the quieter we got. The adrenaline began to settle, replaced by a heavier silence. We stopped asking questions, stopped guessing, stopped rationalizing. We were just thinking, replaying it in our heads, trying to figure out if any of it made sense. To give you an idea of how fast everything unraveled, we'd only been on the dunes for maybe 30 minutes total, and yet it felt like we'd been stuck in some twisted dream for hours. That scream, whatever it was, changed something in me. After hearing that, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe CJ wasn't overreacting. Maybe he saw something I didn't. Maybe I just wanted to believe what I saw was a person because that was easier than the alternative. But the way CJ kept describing it, this deformed, humanoid thing crawling the beach, that's the part that still haunts me the most. Our old town in Florida sat just minutes from a cluster of beaches, each one a little different, but all of them beautiful in their own way. It was kind of our thing. My sisters and I would head out during the golden hour, when the sun was low and the crowds had mostly cleared out. That twilight time always felt perfect, peaceful. The colors in the sky would melt from orange to pink to deep violet, and for a while it felt like the world slowed down just for us. Sometimes we played volleyball, sometimes we waded into the water, letting the waves tug at our ankles. Other times we just laid in the warm sand, talking or listening to music, soaking up the last heat of the day. That night, my youngest sister, Ksenia, she was 13, wanted to go in the water. The sun had already started to dip past the horizon, the sky turning darker by the minute. I was the oldest and, by default, the one responsible for keeping an eye on everyone. "All right," I told her, watching her bounce excitedly on her heels. "But only 10 minutes. Be back after that, okay?" She gave a quick nod and ran straight for the water, her silhouette shrinking against the waves. I stood there, watching her for maybe a minute, just long enough to make sure she didn't drift too far. Then I glanced down at my phone, mindlessly checking a notification. That's when my other sister, 16, tapped me on the arm. "Wanna play?" she asked, nodding toward the volleyball net a few yards away. There was an old, half-deflated volleyball lying in the sand next to it. "Yeah, sure," I said. The ball was kind of sad-looking, but it would work. It always did. We started a lazy game, volleying the ball back and forth, trying to keep it airborne despite its saggy shape. The breeze was picking up, and the light was fading fast now. The sky had deepened to a moody navy blue, and the first stars were beginning to peek through. Then, just as I turned to retrieve the ball from a crooked bounce, I glanced toward the shoreline. Ksenia was gone. I scanned the water, eyes darting left, then right, trying to trace every path she could have taken. But there was nothing. No head bobbing in the waves, no splash, no sign of her at all. I froze for a second, trying not to panic. It was harder to see now with the sun almost gone, but I ran to the water's edge and stared hard into the surf. Still nothing. I shouted her name, once, twice, then kicked off my sandals and bolted into the water. My feet slammed against the cold, wet sand as I pushed forward, the waves crashing against my knees, my thighs, then finally lifting me off my feet. I swam hard, scanning every ripple and dark shadow beneath the surface, my breath ragged, my heart hammering in my chest. She wasn't there. There was no sign of her at all. But then, off to the right, maybe 50 yards away, I spotted it. A boat. Big, sleek, luxurious. It drifted quietly, too close to the shore for a vessel that size. It shouldn't have been that close, and it hadn't been there when we arrived. It was just there now, close enough to swim to. It took a few minutes of swimming, my arms aching, lungs burning, but I finally reached the boat. Up close, it was even bigger than it looked from shore. Sleek, glossy white, with polished rails and tinted windows that gave away nothing of what was inside. A tiny metal stepladder hung off the side, just low enough to reach. I grabbed it, water streaming off me as I hauled myself up onto the bow. As I pulled myself aboard, I froze. Laughter. Light spilled up through an open hatch, casting a warm, golden glow onto the deck. The sound of voices drifted up with it, deep male laughter. I couldn't make out the words, but something about it put my nerves on edge. Too casual, too relaxed, like they were just down there, enjoying themselves. I took a shaky breath and called out, "Hello? Anyone there? I need help." The laughter stopped. Instant silence. "I'm looking for my sister," I added, louder now, leaning closer to the open hatch. Then, relief. A voice. Her voice. "My name!" Ksenia's voice floated up from below, small and startled. Without thinking, I rushed down the stairs into the cabin. It took my eyes a second to adjust to the warm light, and then I saw her, sitting stiffly on the edge of a bed, holding a can of Coke in both hands like she didn't know what else to do with them. Her hair was still wet, strands sticking to her cheeks. She looked pale. Farther back in the cabin, seated opposite each other on cushioned benches, were two grown men. They stared at me as I stormed in. One of them smiled slowly. "You have a very nice sister," he said, his voice syrupy and smug. My stomach twisted. The other man caught the shift in my face immediately. He must have seen the suspicion, the fear, and quickly raised his hands a little like he was diffusing a situation. Hey, relax. We were just giving her a ride. Saw her alone in the water and thought we'd offer some snacks. That's all, no harm, man. His tone was light, almost too light, practiced. I didn't say a word to them, not one. Instead, I walked over, pulled Ksenia to her feet, and wrapped my arm around her shoulders. One of the men leaned forward. "You guys need a ride back to shore?" I ignored him. "Ksenia," I said quietly, "we're swimming back." We climbed up and out without another word. I didn't look back, didn't ask anything else. I just needed to get her off that boat. The swim back was fast, fueled by adrenaline. A couple minutes later, we were back on the beach, soaked and shivering. I looked over my shoulder just once before we left. The boat was already drifting off, growing smaller as it melted into the fading light, vanishing into the horizon like it had never been there. That night, I took both of my sisters home. I told my dad everything. He was furious, rightfully so. First at Ksenia for going off alone, then at me for not getting the boat's name or the men's faces or even a single identifying detail. He was right. I should have thought faster. Ksenia got grounded, strictly banned from going to the beach past sunrise from that night on. None of us ever spoke about the boat again. But I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't gotten there when I did. I've got a beach house down in Florida. It's kind of my personal escape, especially during the colder months up north. Every winter, when the ice and snow settle in over Connecticut, my girlfriend and I make it a point to head south. That place becomes our little retreat from the bitter cold. We'll still visit once in a while during the warmer months, but not nearly as often. There's less of a reason to then, less of a need. But in February, when your face goes numb just stepping outside, that beach house starts calling like a siren. So we packed up and made the trip, just the two of us. The drive was long, a day and a half of white highway lines and gas station coffee. By the time we finally pulled into the driveway, the sky had already started to dim, the sun bleeding into the horizon behind wisps of clouds. It had been a while, about a month and a half since I'd last been there, but everything inside was ready. I always kept the place running through the winter, power on, water running, heat adjusted. We came often enough that shutting it all down didn't make much sense. All we had to do when we arrived was toss our bags in the corner, grab a couple of lounge chairs, and step outside. That's the thing about the house. It sits just 20 seconds from the shoreline. 20 steps from the back door and you're standing in soft sand, the ocean stretching out in front of you like a moving painting. We didn't even bother checking the other rooms, didn't walk through the house, didn't flip a single switch. We were too tired, completely drained from the road, from the stress, from the cold we'd left behind. So we just walked out onto the beach, dragging our chairs behind us, and let ourselves collapse under the quiet sky. The only sounds were the slow, rhythmic crash of the waves and the faint hiss of wind weaving through the palms. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. We lounged on the beach until the sky turned completely dark, so dark that the ocean became an endless black sheet, and the only light was the dull silver sheen of the moon on the waves. My girlfriend's head rested gently on my shoulder. Neither of us said much, just let the warmth of the Florida night soak into our skin while the rest of the world faded away. Then she lifted her head slightly. "Did you leave that light on?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I followed her gaze, turning back toward the house. There, in one of the upstairs windows, a soft glow spilled out through the partially drawn curtains. A light was on. That alone might have been nothing. Maybe I had left it on last time I was here. But there was something else. A shadow. Just barely visible through the sheer curtain. A tall, still figure, faintly outlined by the light behind it. Not moving, just standing there. I turned to my girlfriend, and she looked back at me. Neither of us said it out loud, but we didn't need to. It hit us both in the same breath. Someone was in the house. Someone was in that room. at that window. "I'll check it out," I told her. "Stay here." She nodded, her eyes wide, silent. I sprinted across the sand toward the house, the adrenaline dulling the ache in my legs. As soon as I reached the back doors, I slowed down, heart pounding, every nerve suddenly on high alert. I eased the sliding glass door open, careful not to let it rattle. Then I slipped inside, barefoot, which made each step silent against the hardwood floor. The house was dark and quiet, too quiet. I crept through the kitchen and into the living room, each shadow in the corners of my vision feeling just a little too still. When I reached the base of the stairs, I paused. I could hear something. Movement. Then, click. A door shut, soft but distinct. Upstairs. I moved faster now, up the steps 2 at a time. The wooden railing was cold under my hand, but I didn't stop. At the top, I turned the corner and saw the door to the room that had just had the light on. It was open now, but the light was off. I stepped into the doorway slowly, trying to calm my breathing. Just minutes ago, this room was lit up like someone was home. Now, it was swallowed in shadows. And whoever had been in it was gone. I didn't flip the light on. Something about the darkness felt necessary, like turning on the light would shatter the thin layer of calm I was clinging to. Instead, I made my way over to the narrow ledge just outside the upstairs hallway where I kept a small flashlight tucked between some books. I grabbed it, clicked it on, and let the narrow beam cut through the thick shadows inside the room. That's when I remembered the closet. Its door was shut. That had to be the sound I heard moments ago, the door clicking closed. The timing made too much sense. I hesitated, then slowly clicked the flashlight off again. If someone was in there, I didn't want to give myself away. I crept toward the closet door, moving as silently as I could across the floor. My bare feet made almost no sound, which helped. When I reached the door, I leaned in close and pressed my ear against the wood. Nothing. Not a sound from inside. The entire room had gone eerily still. Not even the usual nighttime creaks from the walls or the hum of the air vents. I stayed like that for several seconds, my breath shallow, my heartbeat loud in my ears. I had no idea what was waiting on the other side, if there was something or someone, but I couldn't just walk away from it. So I reached up and wrapped my fingers around the 2 little knobs, counted to 3 in my head, and then yanked the doors open all at once. Nothing. Darkness. From what I could tell, the closet looked empty, but the shadows were thick and I couldn't be sure. I switched the flashlight back on and aimed the beam inside. Still nothing. Just a tangle of old hangers and a few boxes shoved against the back wall. No signs of movement, no one hiding. Relief hit me in a wave. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. But before I could relax, a sudden creak came from the hallway just outside the room. I turned fast and ran into the hallway, the beam of my flashlight slicing through the dark. And there she was, my girlfriend. I nearly snapped. "What are you doing in here?" I hissed. "I told you to stay outside." She looked startled, maybe a little guilty, but also scared. "I didn't want you in here," she said quietly. As much as I was mad, I couldn't really argue. Now that she was inside, it was safer to have her help than to send her back out there alone. "Fine," I said. "Help me check the rest of the upstairs." We moved fast, splitting up and going room by room. There were 3 bedrooms upstairs in total. We searched them all, under beds, behind dressers, inside closets. Nothing. We regrouped, checked the upstairs bathroom. Still no one. Then we moved downstairs, going through every room. The living room, the kitchen, the guest room, even the laundry area. Every single closet, every possible place someone could have hidden. Nothing. It was like whoever had been in the house If someone had been in the house, just vanished. Eventually, we had to come to the only conclusion that made any sense. Whoever it was had gotten out somehow. We locked all the doors, double-checked every window, even looked for signs of forced entry or missing belongings. But there was nothing. No broken locks, no busted screens, no footprints, no stolen items, just silence and exhaustion. So we gave up, brushed it off, and went to bed. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Even after locking every door, checking every room twice, and convincing ourselves there had to be a reasonable explanation, something in the house just felt off, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. We lay in bed for what felt like hours. My girlfriend curled close beside me, barely speaking. Neither of us wanted to admit how shaken we were, how close to the edge we felt. But it was there, hanging in the silence between us. Eventually, exhaustion won. The adrenaline wore off, and the weight of the long drive and everything that had happened sank us into sleep. But that sleep was shallow, broken. I woke up sometime after midnight. The room was pitch black, the kind of black where you can't even see your hand in front of your face. I listened for a moment, trying to figure out what woke me. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Soft. Deliberate. Upstairs. I froze. Not the kind of freeze where you think through your options, but the kind where your body forgets how to move. The footsteps were slow, one at a time, crossing the hallway just outside our room. I glanced at my girlfriend. Her eyes were already open. She'd heard it too. We didn't speak, didn't breathe, just listened. Another step, and another. Then, silence. I slowly reached over to the nightstand and grabbed the flashlight I'd left there earlier. I clicked it on, the sudden beam making both of us flinch. I quietly swung my legs over the bed and crept toward the door, every step deliberate. I opened the bedroom door slowly. The hallway was empty, but something was different. The door to the guest bedroom, the one we checked earlier, was now slightly open. I knew for a fact we had closed it. I motioned for my girlfriend to stay put, and she nodded silently. My flashlight beam shook slightly as I walked down the hall and pushed the door open wider. The guest bedroom was cold. Much colder than the rest of the house. My bare feet recoiled slightly against the chill of the wooden floor. I swept the flashlight across the room. Empty. No signs of anything. Nothing had been moved. No windows open, no noise. But the room felt wrong now. Heavy, as if something had been there moments before I entered and only just slipped away. I backed out of the room and gently pulled the door shut again. When I got back to the bedroom, I didn't say much. My girlfriend was sitting up, clutching the sheets, eyes wide. "Was anyone there?" she whispered. I shook my head slowly. "No," I said, "but something's not right." We didn't sleep much after that. We kept the flashlight on, letting it cast a small circle of light on the ceiling as we lay awake, listening to the silence that pressed in from every corner of the house. Neither of us said it, but we were both thinking the same thing. Whatever we saw in that window earlier hadn't left.